Have you ever felt like your carry is just letting you down, and it's impossible to win games while playing support because your cores are bad? I'm here today to tell you that you're wrong. Well, at least most of the time. But more than that, I'm here today to tell you how you can have a simple but efficient game plan to have impact in your games. Before we jump in, here's your question of the day. What hero do you enjoy supporting the most? And which one do you hate the most? I can't imagine a lane partner more boring than anti-mage, but supporting a good bristleback is always very fun. The bread and butter of any role is the laning stage, especially for hard supports. Your impact is going to be the most prominent in the early game, so you have to make sure to use that time well. Our first major decision is a simple one. What hero do you pick? In the current patch of 7.27c, you'll pick first phase pretty much every game. This means you won't see any enemy heroes. That's going to limit the hero pool quite a bit, so I recommend you pick up versatile heroes that will always have an impact. In the current patch, Jakiro, Crystal Maiden, Bane, and if you're feeling up to the challenge of a harder hero, Winter Wyvern fit the bill. That said, don't feel discouraged if you want to play something else. How you use your hero matters a lot more than what you pick. Now that you have your hero, there are a few questions to ask yourself even before the first wave comes out. First, which bounty runes to contest? If your carry is weak level 1, it's often better to go to your off lane and try to get first blood or at least secure 2 runes. Tell your carry to wait under your tower if you do that. Next, who's gonna get the ranged creeps? In most games, if your carry walks up to last hit a ranged creep, they're going to take a lot of damage, even potentially die. If the wave is pulled further apart by using creep aggro, it's even worse for them. To get around this, it's going to be your job as hard support to secure the ranged creep with whatever spell you have. Make sure to communicate this early to avoid confusion and to prevent your carry from getting angry at you for taking the last hits. Once the first creep wave comes, it's time for you to start fighting. First, make sure to position yourself correctly. Keep to the trees on the side of the lane and make sure you don't draw creep aggro too often. This will also help you avoid just sitting behind your carry, which is quite possibly the worst thing that you can do as a support. Once in position, you'll need to know which hero to trade. But before that, let's take a step back a bit and think about the whole purpose of the laning stage. You have 2 jobs: to let your carry get as much golden experience as possible and keep your tower up. The latter is not a concern right away, so all your focus should be on the former. With that in mind, it's simple to know who to harass. Whichever hero is messing with your carry's last hit is who you want to hit. In most lanes, this is the position 4, but sometimes it's the offlaner. There are a few ways the enemy can mess with your carry's farm, but the most effective way is simply pull the hard camp. This is typically the position 4's job, so make sure you fight them whenever they try to do that. Go to the camp 4 to 5 seconds before the pull timing and start dragging the neutral creeps away from the lane. On the flip side, you can also end up pushing your own wave in many ways. It doesn't really matter how. All we care about is getting the wave back so that the carry can farm again. The most obvious choice is, of course, to pull a camp. But which one? The best you can do is simply pull the hard camp. There are a few problems with this though, most notably that you can be contested. If you're weaker, you'll simply die or take too much damage. Not to mention you often can't do the pull at all. In that case, go and pull your small camp. Stack it if you can, but it's not necessary. In conclusion, if you're weaker in the lane, pull the small camp. If you're stronger, pull the hard camp. Stack the small as you can, but be careful not to let the position 4 bully you while doing it. Once you've spent the first 7 to 8 minutes doing that, you should start thinking about what your job is after the laning phase. The main difference is whether your carry stays in the lane. If your carry stays, you need to know where you're useful. Try to either set up kills for your mid or go to the off lane to pressure the enemy tower. Rarely you should stay in your lane if you can keep killing the offlaner. If your carry leaves, you'll want to stay and hold your tower. It's now your responsibility. To make sure you don't die, stay hidden behind trees and only come out when it's safe to push the wave out. Call for help when the enemies dive you under tower. Important to note, regardless of which lane you choose to play in, it's very important to keep your teleport scroll off cooldown. It doesn't matter how good your hero is early game if you can't show up to fights. As the game progresses, tier 1 towers go down and carries start joining fights. The game will change a lot from your perspective. You'll spend most of the game following around your teammates fighting and warding, but which hero should you play around? Since you mostly want to fight, not farm, you'll naturally want to play around the core that fights the most, typically the offlaner. Follow them around the map and help whatever they want to do. Sometimes this will be pushing towers, so sit behind them and be ready to fight the defenders. Set up wards around towers you want to take. At other times, you'll have someone like Legion Commander who wants to run around and get pickoffs. In that case, pick up some smokes, avoid showing on the map, and run after enemies. There are many examples and playstyles, but the core of it stays the same. You have to enable a teammate to make plays, not try to make the plays yourself. Eventually, no matter how the game goes, team fights will happen and good supports are often the key to winning them. So let's get into it. First, almost all supports share a common problem of being slow and easy to put down. That firmly places most supports' roles as backliners in a fight. What this roughly means is that you'll want to stay behind your tankier, beefier teammates and use spells from afar while staying alive as long as you can. To make that positioning easier, always try to put a hero between you and an enemy you're afraid of and use the map to hide yourself. Hide behind trees, stay on high ground, you name it. If you're not visible, it's much harder to jump on you. After you get your positioning down, you have to think about who to target with your spells. Every hero's different, but there's usually one, maybe two signature spells for your hero that you really need to consider, and it's only effective on a few targets. For example, if you're a Witch Doctor, you mostly think about your ultimate and Maledict. You need to position yourself to make sure you are in range to use your spells as needed, without being too close and risk dying before using them. You'll also want to mostly target beefy heroes with your spells, but if someone overextends, they're fair game. So to have a concrete example, here's a fight played by the writer as Witch Doctor. He knows that he has the hero to kill the tanky Night Stalker, and he's afraid of the Phoenix or Earth Spirit jumping on him. So he stays back until he sees a good opportunity to use Cask, but holds his ultimate for the Night Stalker. Eventually, his patience pays off, and he gets to take him down. Dota's a very difficult game, but if you know what to focus on, it gets a lot easier. Late game is going to be pretty much the same as the mid game. Take fights, ward the map, be extremely careful with your positioning in fights, and follow the team around. There's one important detail though, and that's Roshan. Since Roshan is the main objective a team would want to take before trying to close out a game, all of your movements, wards, and fights are probably going to be on the top half of the map if you're ahead, and on the bottom lane if you're behind. Keep a smoke on you at all times in case you need to move to the pit quickly. When pushing or defending high ground, take extra care to stay back, since you can't hide yourself there. There's an important aspect to supporting that while we've touched on a few times here and there, it clearly deserves its own section: warding. For the entire game, it's primarily your job to handle warding for your team as a hard support. In the early game, you are mostly expected to ward for your own lane, since moving away to place vision leaves your carry exposed for too long. At that stage, you are mostly afraid of ganks from other lanes, so make sure to have a ward up at or right before nighttime hits at 5 minutes. Either place a lane ward to see TP rotations, or one ramp with the neutral camps to see rotations from the mid lane. After laning, you'll want to place wards in your areas your team plays in, or areas you want to gank. If you want to ward your own areas, place the most efficient vision you can. Don't worry about getting dewarded. These wards should cover entrances to the jungle your carry is farming, or be vision around towers to your off lane wants to push. Making one of your wards also see a rune spot in the mid lane is also important, especially later on. The second type of wards are going to be wards that see the areas the enemy is playing in. Heroes that rely on pickoffs like Legion Commander or Doom will benefit from them a lot, so place them if your goal is to hunt heroes as opposed to taking towers. There are also a lot of wards you will want to place in uncommon spots because you can't be there to protect them. Take note of those common sentry placements that hit efficient wards and put yours outside of those. Unfortunately, you are also responsible for taking care of enemy vision, not only yours. You should carry sentries around pretty much at all times after the laning stage, and deward enemy vision as you figure out where it is. One of the most common and useful tricks is to always keep an eye out on the enemy hard support's movements. Beware that they will also do the same to you, so avoid placing wards where the enemy team can see you. That's gonna be it for this guide. The short video is meant as a basic framework for players new to supporting or new to the game, so I know this won't be new to many of you. As such, we'll also be writing a follow-up video with more advanced aspects of supporting. If you feel like anything is missing, it's probably intended to be in that video, so look out for it in the coming weeks.